There's a reason some scientists refuse to talk about certain quantum results. Not because they're unproven, but because they're too uncomfortable to explain. Experiments that suggest reality doesn't exist until it's observed. Measurements that hint your awareness might actually shape the physical world. And a growing body of evidence that implies something deeply disturbing, that what we call reality might not be real until you're involved in it. In this video, you're going to explore one of the most controversial, mind-bending ideas in modern science, the discovery that observation doesn't just reveal reality, it might create it. We'll break down the physics behind this, the experiments, the theories, the paradoxes, and why even the most respected scientists are still debating what it really means. And by the end, you might not just understand the science, you might begin to see your own perception, your thoughts, your presence, your attention, as something far more powerful than you've ever imagined. Because once you understand how reality responds to observation, you may start observing yourself differently too. There are truths so strange, we stop noticing them. Like the fact that nothing you see is truly solid, or that the moment you look at something, it changes. Not metaphorically, literally. The world around you, the one you think is steady, predictable, real, might only be one version of many waiting to be selected by your attention. And that's not philosophy. That's physics. Imagine walking into a room where everything is hidden under silk cloths, a table, a lamp, maybe something unrecognizable in the corner. You can guess what's under each cover. But until you lift the fabric, each object remains undefined, like a story with countless endings, all waiting to be chosen. This is not just poetic thought. This is how the quantum world works, and it's far more real and far more terrifying than we've ever been prepared to believe. At the smallest level we've ever measured, where atoms themselves break apart into something even less tangible, reality starts to behave like a trickster. It stops being predictable. It stops obeying rules that made sense in physics class. Particles, or rather, what we used to call particles, start behaving like waves, like probabilities, like maybes. One electron, for example, doesn't have a clear position or momentum until we check. Before that moment, it's not just that we don't know where it is. It's that it doesn't have a place to be at all. It exists everywhere it could be, simultaneously, until we look. Then, suddenly, it picks one location and pretends that was the only place it ever occupied. This collapse, the snapping of possibility into certainty, is one of the most disturbing truths of quantum mechanics, because it suggests that reality isn't something that's just there, passively waiting to be seen. Reality might need us, the observers, in order to fully exist. This idea has been tested, not once or twice, but over and over again through an infamous experiment known as the double slit. When scientists fired particles like photons or electrons at a barrier with two slits, they expected them to behave like little bullets, go through one slit or the other. But instead, when no one was watching the path, they acted like waves, creating interference patterns as if they had gone through both slits at the same time. Only when a measurement device was installed, when the act of observing occurred, did the particles behave like individual dots again. It's as though the universe was holding multiple stories in its hand, and only picked one the moment someone decided to look. But here's the unsettling part. If observation affects outcome, then what else are we shaping just by being aware? How deep does this rabbit hole go? Some physicists tried to sidestep the weirdness. They said, maybe there's a hidden variable, something we're not seeing that decides which path the particle takes. But test after test, especially those breaking what's called Bell's inequality, proved them wrong. There's no secret script hiding behind the scenes. It seems the universe really does operate by rules that make no intuitive sense. A particle might exist in multiple states, and somehow, your simple decision to measure it, even from far away, changes the result. That's not science fiction. That's verified quantum behavior. And if you're already uneasy, that's a good sign, because you're starting to sense the real weight of the mystery. The implications of this are so large, they ripple into questions we're usually too afraid to ask. If a tree falls in the forest and no one observes it, does it make a sound? In the quantum world, the better question is, does it even fall? Or does it wait? like the covered objects in that room, for someone to lift the veil of probability and give it shape. Suddenly, our role in the cosmos feels much less like passive bystander and more like co-creator. Not because we wish it to be so, but because reality itself refuses to settle until we enter the scene. This doesn't mean that everything is just in your mind or that you can wish a Ferrari into existence. That's not what quantum mechanics says. But it does suggest that your experience of the world is woven together with the act of looking, of perceiving, of engaging. That your consciousness, whatever it really is tangled into the machinery of the universe at its most fundamental level. It's not just matter and energy anymore. It's choice. It's awareness. It's something we don't yet have words for, but which stares back at us every time we try to understand what's real. In ancient traditions, people spoke of the world as illusion, Maya, the dreamlike nature of existence. Back then, it sounded like spirituality or metaphor. Now, thousands of years later, physics is whispering the same thing in a different language. The illusion isn't that nothing is real. It's that what we call real is just one slice of a much larger, more fluid possibility. And this slice only solidifies when consciousness touches it. Let that sink in. You don't just live in the world. In some mysterious way, you help sculpt it. Every glance, every question, every act of attention, it all participates in the outcome. Now, as we peel deeper into this mystery, let's take a step back and recognize just how bizarre it is that any of this works. You don't need a lab coat to understand that our senses were never designed to perceive quantum phenomena. They evolved for survival, not for truth. So it's no surprise that everything about the quantum world feels alien, eerie, almost sacred. But even though our senses can't detect it, our math can. Our experiments can. And those results don't lie. They just don't care if we find them uncomfortable. The universe is not in the business of making sense to us. It's in the business of being. And we, strangely enough, are part of that unfolding. It might be tempting to dismiss all this as something that happens far away, deep in particle accelerators, or buried in theoretical physics books. But quantum mechanics isn't just about electrons and lab experiments. It's the fabric beneath everything you've ever touched, tasted, or loved. The atoms in your hand, the photons hitting your eyes right now, even the cells firing in your brain as you listen to this, they all obey the same quantum laws. It's not a separate layer of reality. It is reality. The illusion is believing we're separate from it. Let's go deeper. Have you ever wondered why particles can be entangled across vast distances, so that when one changes, the other responds instantly, even if they're on opposite ends of the galaxy? Einstein famously called this spooky action at a distance because it seemed to break the speed of light. But that's not what's happening. These entangled particles aren't sending messages faster than light. They're not sending messages at all. It's more accurate to say they never stopped being part of the same thing. When you observe one, you're not influencing the other. You're just revealing a connection that was already there. A hidden thread stretched across the cosmos, pulling everything into one unified moment. This throws another wrench into our assumptions. We like to think of space and time as containers, backdrops against which life plays out. But what if space and time themselves are emergent, not fundamental? What if the true scaffolding of reality is something far stranger? A web of information, probability, and entanglement that generates the illusion of space, time, and even cause and effect. Some physicists are seriously exploring this possibility, not as science fiction, but as models with predictive power. And in those models, you're not a separate observer in a disconnected universe. You're an active thread in a cosmic tapestry, woven into the very act of creation. Let's return to the idea of the observer. In quantum theory, observation doesn't necessarily mean a person staring at a particle through a microscope. It can be any interaction that extracts information. But the strange truth is, we still don't fully understand what counts as a true observer. Is it consciousness? Is it a measuring device? Is it something deeper? An act of relational connection between systems? This is one of the greatest mysteries still haunting science. Some interpretations say that observation splits reality into parallel timelines, a multiverse where every possibility plays out. Others say the wave function is just a mathematical tool, and reality always had a single path. But the hard truth is this: no experiment to date has resolved the question. All we can do is describe outcomes. The why remains elusive. And yet, this elusiveness is part of what makes quantum theory so powerful. Because while the meaning remains slippery, the predictions are precise. Quantum mechanics powers the chips in your phone. It explains why the sun shines. It underpins MRI scans, lasers, GPS systems, all built on a theory that tells us the world doesn't really exist in one state until it's observed. That should stop you in your tracks. We've built our entire digital civilization on top of a framework that denies objectivity at its core. And it works. But what does this mean for you, here now? Beyond the awe and the science? It means that the boundary between you and the world might not be as solid as it seems. It means that choice, awareness, and attention are more than passive processes. They may be engines of manifestation, tuning forks that nudge probabilities into outcomes. Maybe not in the magical thinking sense, but in a real participatory way. The universe, it seems, is not a machine winding down, but a conversation, and you're part of it. And that brings us to the question most people are afraid to ask. What role does consciousness truly play? Is it just an emergent product of brain chemistry, a side effect of neurons firing? Or is it something deeper, something woven into the fabric of physics itself? There are theories, like ORCH-OR and integrated information theory, that suggest consciousness may be a fundamental feature of reality, not just a late-stage byproduct of evolution. These ideas are controversial, sure, but they are growing, not fading. And at the heart of them is a very unsettling implication: that awareness might not just observe reality, it might help construct it. So now pause. Really pause. Let all of this settle in. The universe might not be what you thought it was. You might not be who you thought you were. And in the gaps between observation, possibility, and collapse, in the quiet breath between choice and outcome, something extraordinary is happening. You're not just a witness to this unfolding. You are part of the unfolding itself, and if you've made it this far, maybe this isn't just a science video for you. Maybe you feel it. That strange pull of wonder, of recognition. If you do, I want to invite you into this exploration. Not as a subscriber, but as a fellow question asker. So if you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel. Not because it's the thing people say, but because this is the space where curiosity lives and breathes. And more than that, I'd love to hear from you. Tell me this: what part of this journey hit you the hardest? What thought refused to leave your mind? Drop it in the comments, not as a reply, but as a continuation of this dialogue. Let's build this understanding together, not as viewers and creators, but as seekers walking the same strange path. You've probably heard the phrase, energy can't be created or destroyed, only transformed. It's a simple idea, often quoted without much thought. But stop for a moment and really consider what it means. Nothing is ever truly lost. Everything shifts, recombines, resurfaces. Even your thoughts, your memories, your breath. In a universe that behaves this way, permanence is an illusion. Identity is an illusion. And the more deeply we study what we are made of, the more slippery that idea becomes. You are, at your most basic level, a collection of fields, fluctuations, waves, probabilities. You are a symphony of temporary forms dancing inside something vast, invisible, and unknowable. And somehow, that's not frightening. It's beautiful. The question many ask at this point is, if everything is made of the same ingredients, why is the world so diverse? Why are no two people exactly alike? Why does a violin sound different from a saxophone if both are just air molecules vibrating? The answer lies in structure, in how those quantum fields organize themselves. The blueprint is information. The universe is not just made of matter and energy. It's made of relationships, of encoded patterns. DNA is one obvious example, but it's deeper than biology. Every system, from galaxies to neurons, follows rules of information flow. These flows define how particles behave, how matter sticks together, and how time unfolds. Even time itself is under debate. In the quantum realm, The arrow of time isn't as rigid as it feels to us. Some particles operate in a way that defies any clean separation between past and future. Some experiments even suggest that future measurements can influence present outcomes, an idea so strange that most scientists hesitate to talk about it. And yet, the math doesn't lie. We may be trapped in a linear experience of time, but the quantum world might not be. Maybe time isn't a river flowing forward. Maybe it's a vast ocean, and we are simply riding one wave at a time. This leads us to a wild but increasingly discussed possibility. What if consciousness doesn't just experience time? What if it chooses which moment to experience? Think of time as a field, not a line. If that's the case, then each moment of your life might not be gone forever. It may still exist, still resonate somewhere, like notes in a song that are no longer being played but still echo faintly in the room. And if the mind is more than just a byproduct of biology, if it's connected in some fundamental way to the structure of space and time, then it might not be bound by the limitations we assume. Let's be clear, this isn't a mystical claim hidden behind science words. It's a real frontier, a place where physicists, neuroscientists, and philosophers are gathering, awkwardly, skeptically, curiously, to ask questions that a few decades ago would have been career suicide. And the more they poke, the more they find that everything is more connected, more responsive, more conscious than anyone expected. What we thought was random might be entangled. What we called noise might be meaning we haven't yet learned to hear. If this all sounds like a dream, maybe that's the point. Reality, as experienced from inside, is always a little dreamlike. You wake up each day and continue a story you didn't start, with a body you didn't choose, and thoughts that often appear before you think them. You navigate a world of seemingly solid things, forgetting that they're made of mostly empty space. You make decisions with a brain built from atoms that don't exist in a single place. The absurdity isn't in questioning the world. It's in pretending any of this was ever obvious to begin with. And now, here we are. You, listening. Me, speaking. Both of us riding waves of light and sound through a digital medium, yet connecting, over ideas that might touch the structure of reality itself. That's not trivial. That's not entertainment. That's transformation. Because the moment you begin to see yourself not as a static creature in a fixed world, but as a moving point in a responsive, fluid universe, you start to change how you live. You question your limitations. You stop seeing yourself as trapped by fate or luck or even time. You begin to ask different questions. What happens when I become more conscious of what I pay attention to? What happens when I stop identifying with thoughts and start observing them like passing clouds? What does it mean to focus my awareness like a laser, not just on my surroundings, but on the quality of my own observation? Suddenly, quantum mechanics isn't just about particles. It becomes a mirror for the inner life, a language for awakening. It tells you that uncertainty is not failure, it is potential. That randomness is not chaos, it is freedom. So here's the invitation: do something radical. Don't just absorb this passively, interact with it. Leave a comment below, but not just any comment. Share something from your own reality that feels flexible. It could be a memory that changed every time you told it, a coincidence that felt too perfect, a gut feeling that later made sense. Tell us your moment of collapse, when possibility became presence. Let's use the comment section not just as replies, but as recordings of observation, as collective data points in this experiment we call reality. Because if we really are part of the unfolding, then each of our stories matters. And your story might spark someone else's realization. You never know whose reality you'll help collapse into something beautiful. By now, one truth should be ringing loud in your mind. The deeper we peer into the universe, the more it begins to resemble something participatory, as if the observer is not just a side character, but a vital part of the storyline. But that raises a difficult question. What exactly are we observing with? Are we seeing the world with our eyes, or is something deeper doing the seeing? If quantum phenomena shift based on observation, what is this awareness at the center of it all? Some researchers have begun exploring whether consciousness might not be an emergent result of brain complexity at all, but instead something intrinsic to the structure of the universe. That perhaps our minds are not just receiving data from the world, they are entangled with it. There are radical hypotheses in modern science proposing that the universe itself may be a conscious system, or that consciousness is a fundamental field, like gravity or electromagnetism. If so, then we are not just conscious beings. We are fragments of a much larger awareness peering into itself through infinite perspectives. What makes these ideas even more astonishing is how well they echo across disciplines. In ancient Vedic philosophy, there was the concept of Brahman, the unchanging, infinite reality that manifests itself as all things. In modern physics, we now find ourselves describing quantum fields that permeate space, invisible and omnipresent, giving rise to matter when disturbed. Different language, same metaphor. Different century, same question. What is the true nature of what we're part of? Think for a moment about the device you're using to watch or listen to this. It's made of metal, glass, plastic, and inside it, there are silicon circuits carrying information. But those materials are nothing more than organized atoms, which are composed of vibrating energy patterns. The thoughts and voice reaching you now are not moving through solid reality. They are encoded light, interpreted sound, abstract signal, yet you are feeling something. Emotion, connection, curiosity. How can this be? It's because what we call matter is not what we once believed it to be. It's not a static thing. It's a process, a performance. And you, somehow, are both audience and actor. This duality, of being both the watcher and the watched, is mirrored in the famous thought experiment involving quantum erasers. In these experiments, scientists demonstrated that even if you erase the possibility of knowing which path a particle took after it's already hit the screen, the interference pattern reappears, as if the particle somehow retroactively knew what would be known. The act of potentially observing was enough to alter what had already happened. This isn't just academic. It challenges our most basic assumptions about time, causality, and choice. It suggests the universe may not be a linear chain of cause and effect, but a web of relationships where knowledge, or the possibility of knowledge, loops back in time. The more you immerse yourself in this strange truth, the more difficult it becomes to draw clear lines between observer and observed, between cause and effect, between inner and outer. That's the uncomfortable gift of quantum thinking. It doesn't just challenge your beliefs about science, it invites you to question your sense of self. Are you a body moving through a fixed world? Or are you a node in a vast, shifting matrix of entangled events, some of which arise only when you tune your attention toward them? These are no longer philosophical curiosities. They are questions with implications for mental health, creativity, decision-making, and even free will. If reality responds to observation, then what we choose to focus on, consciously or not, might shape far more than our personal lives. It might ripple through the very scaffolding of the world. That's why this journey isn't just about physics. It's about perception. It's about reclaiming something most people lost long ago. The sense that being alive is miraculous not because of some outside force, but because of the sheer complexity and weirdness of what is. The more we understand about the subatomic world, the more it seems like reality has always been more flexible than rigid, more musical than mechanical, and yet, this isn't chaos. That's the most comforting twist. Quantum mechanics may be strange, but it's consistent. Every time we ask the same question, in the same way, we get the same answer. That's what makes science work. The rules may be alien to our intuition, but they are not random. The uncertainty principle, for example, doesn't say, we don't know. It says, we can't know both at once. This is a law, not a flaw. Reality enforces a kind of humility in its structure, a limit on what can be pinned down. And, in that gap, we find not confusion, but freedom. So maybe it's time we stop asking whether the universe is strange, and start asking whether we're finally ready to embrace that strangeness, to lean into the mystery rather than push it away. Maybe instead of demanding the universe become more like us, we become more like it, flexible, dynamic, filled with potential. You might be wondering now, if everything is interconnected, if observation shapes experience, and if consciousness is embedded in the weave of it all, then what do we do with that knowledge? That's where the script ends and the story begins. This is the invitation to live differently, to pay closer attention, to speak with more awareness, to notice the small things, the coincidences, the subtle nudges. Because if the world is more participatory than passive, then your presence matters more than you ever imagined. Now imagine this. Somewhere in the tapestry of your own life, there may have been a moment that didn't quite make sense. A strange coincidence, a choice you couldn't explain, a feeling that reality had flexed for just a second. Maybe it was a dream that became real. Maybe it was someone calling you just as you thought about them. Maybe it was a sense of déjà vu so intense, it left you breathless. For most of us, these moments get filed away as weird and quickly forgotten. But what if those were the glimpses? Tiny cracks in the surface of this constructed, stabilized world. Little signs that there is more happening beneath the surface than we were trained to believe. If quantum mechanics has taught us anything, it's that what you see is only ever one version of what could have been. Every observed outcome rests atop a sea of unrealized possibilities. You are surrounded by them. You carry them. Every decision you make, every word you speak, every pause before action, collapses a cloud of probabilities into a single unfolding. That doesn't mean life is a video game where you control everything, but it might mean that your awareness tunes which music starts playing next. And when you zoom out far enough, you realize this isn't about particles at all. It's about potential, and we are walking, breathing vessels of it. Even the act of listening to this video, your attention right now, is a kind of measurement. You're not just consuming words, you're creating meaning. You're interpreting, feeling. You might pause the video, rewind, think, disagree, feel chills. All of it matters. Because this isn't just a transfer of data. This is a co-creation of perspective. And that's the quiet revolution quantum theory whispers to us. That reality isn't a thing handed to you. It's a dance you're already part of. Most people just never notice the steps. And once you do, you start living differently. Not because the world suddenly becomes magical, but because you understand the magic that was always there, disguised as probability, pattern, energy. You begin to treat your focus like currency. You stop arguing for your limitations. You understand that asking a question is not weakness. It's how the universe responds. And that small, conscious choices can ripple across a field much larger than your physical self. You begin to trust your attention. You begin to trust the intelligence behind every mystery. So if you've made it here, truly made it to this point in the journey, I want to thank you, but not with some automatic like and subscribe pitch. No. What I'm inviting you into is different. If you felt something awaken while listening to this, I ask you to stay close. Subscribe, yes, but only if you want to continue this strange and beautiful unraveling. This isn't a channel. This is a frequency, and you're already tuned in. And here's something else I'd love from you. Something real. In the comments, share with me one moment in your life that made you question the nature of reality. Maybe something unexplainable. Maybe something small, but unforgettable. Maybe something that, only now, makes sense in light of what you just heard. Let's turn this space into more than reactions. Let's turn it into a record of reality. Through your eyes, through your voice, through the things you've lived but never told, because that's how quantum reality moves. Not in massive explosions, but in quiet realizations, in the tiny collapses of attention into form. You may never see a particle, but you are a field of experience. You are part of this infinite complexity. And if that doesn't scare you, maybe it should. But more than that, I hope it inspires you. You are not small, you are not separate, and you are not random. You are observing. You are shaping. You are part of a universe that is far weirder, more intelligent, and more alive than anyone dared to imagine.